Hi, Rich Munson from the site Tensoku, and I wanted to talk about rotational delivery. We'll talk about it from two perspectives. The first is striking, particularly in things like kinzuki, and then we'll look at it from the aspect of blocking. So first we'll cover striking. When you're striking, you want to think about, particularly if you're striking with something like a kinzuki, you want to think about what your elbow is doing as you're delivering that strike. If my elbow flares out, then I'm going to strike with, unfortunately, the smaller bones of my hand, which greatly increases the chance of injury to my hand. One of the most common injuries to the hand is a break in the smaller metacarpal bone in the back of your hand, and that often comes from striking a hard surface with something like a punch, which is exactly what you'd be doing. So we want to make sure that the elbow stays down for a couple reasons. One is that injury, and the other is just anatomically thinking about what's going on. The elbow functions as strictly a hinge joint, so it's only moving up and down or in and out relative to your bicep and your humerus bone. So if my elbow flares up, it's still only moving in and out relative to that humerus bone. So no matter where I put my arm, it's only moving in and out in direct line with my humerus bone in my upper arm. So when I'm punching, if I let my elbow flare out, then this hinge joint delivers my strike in a non-linear and more circular manner, and that's going to impact, again, with that small slide of the fist, increasing your chances of injury. So when you're doing something like kinzuki, keep your elbow down as long as possible, and then just rotate over with rotational delivery as your fist nears the target area. And if you do that, these two knuckles, the larger two knuckles of the hand, which are much more robust, will make contact with the target and reduce the chances of injury. Also, if you look at it, this is a more direct and linear strike, so it'll have much more impact force into the target area than a non-linear strike will have. So when you're doing your strikes, practicing your strikes, think about how rotational delivery can and perhaps should play a role in that delivery. And we will now look at some blocking ideas and how rotational delivery can benefit you there. Using rotational delivery when you block has two primary benefits. One is self-preservation. You're going to reduce the chance of injuring yourself. And secondly, it has a manipulative benefit in that you will cause some sort of structural change in your opponent, which you can then use to your advantage. So let's look at the self-preservation aspect first. When a strike is coming in, you want to be able to hit and then have your hand or arm or whichever blocking surface you're using rotate so that it's distributing the impact forces across the larger surface area. That's much more likely to preserve your hand or your arm than striking with a single point of contact. So here you're just talking about point forces. You know, you're delivering the same energy into your opponent, and that same energy is being delivered into your hand. But with rotational delivery, you're trying to distribute those impact forces across the large surface area to minimize your injury chances. The second aspect of this rotational delivery is that it imparts some sort of structural change in your opponent. So as this comes in and rotates, you'll see that your opponent has some sort of rotational structural change, which you can then use to your advantage. So it has some manipulative abilities that you certainly want to be considering when you're doing blocking. So blocking eventually should become more than just stopping a strike. Eventually you want it to be thought of as using that strike as initial manipulative forces against your opponent. The next thing you want to think about is things like a bony block, which Rotational uke is. You typically are striking here on the arm, which is a fairly bony surface. You again want to be very conscious of using rotational delivery so that you're making contact here and rotating through that rotational movement to minimize the risk of injury to, in this case, the radius bone. So this also applies to something like, particularly applies to something like Gedan-Barai, where you have perhaps a Megeti coming in, and now you're going to be slamming your relatively small arm into a much more stout lower leg. So as this kick is coming in, the first thing obviously you want to do is get out of the line of attack. So we're going to be moving off so that now we're intercepting the leg more at the side rather than straight ahead. This is a recipe for a broken arm. Don't strike into a block or strike a block into a leg that's coming directly at you. So as this kick is coming in, we're going to be moving off to the side and then using rotational delivery as we rotate both our hand and our center to move that kick out of the way. And once we've done that, then we're usually right in position to take advantage of our opponent, who has now rotated their center out of the way and is standing on one leg for at least a brief second, and then we'll find a way to take advantage of that very quickly. So you want to think about rotational delivery both from your striking skill sets and your blocking skill sets. There are many cases where you may not be using rotational delivery when you might want to consider that as a benefit both from the effectiveness of the maneuver and also from the self-preservation aspects of using rotational delivery. So I hope that's helped, and thank you for watching.